Okay, in the reading for this week, we'll be reading selections from the Confucian Analects, right, or the Lunyu, Dongo in Japanese, Lunyu. I'll put the kanji for that in the description below and in your study guides. This is the selections from the Lunyu that have to deal with the idea of humaneness, or ren, jin in Japanese, ninben ni te kaite, jin, ren. This is the idea of humaneness, sometimes translated as benevolence or humanity. All right, and the Lunyu, of course, is a very large work. We're not going to be reading the whole thing, but we'll be reading many of the important excerpts from that work in this class. All right, Confucius, who is Confucius? This is the Latinized version of the Kongzi or Confucius. Remember, the Jesuits were the first Westerners to encounter the ideas of Confucius and Mencius and so forth, and they Latinized his name and rendered it as Confucius, and he's still known by that name in the West today. Confucius, or to call him by his proper name, Kong Chiu, right? He's known as Kongzi or Confucius, but his proper name was Kong Chiu, born in 551 BC, died in 479. He lived at a time of political turmoil and transition during the Warring States period, toward the latter part of the Zhou dynasty. The China of his time consisted of a number of small feudal states, which, although theoretically subject to the kings of the Zhou dynasty, were actually independent. Confucius and many of his contemporaries were concerned about the state of turmoil, competition, and warfare between the feudal states. They sought philosophical and practical solutions to the problems of government, solutions that they hoped would lead to a restoration of unity and stability. Confucius had no notable success as a government official, but he was renowned even in his own time as a teacher. Okay, so we'll see the same with Mencius too later. Mencius was not much of a bureaucrat or an official, but he was a great teacher, and he's remembered today as a teacher and philosopher as well. Confucius's followers recorded his teachings a generation or two after his death, and these teachings remained influential in China, Vietnam, Korea, and Japan to this day. Okay, so kind of like Socrates, how he didn't write down any of his ideas, but his students, pupils, wrote it down. Plato, for example, wrote down his sayings and his teachings and so forth after his death. So we see the same thing here with Confucius. His followers recorded after his death, and these teachings remain influential in China, Vietnam, Korea, and Japan to this day. The anecdotes and records of short conversations compiled by his disciples go under the English title of the Analects, right? The Dongo, Lunyu in Chinese. The excerpts from the Analects presented below are specifically concerned with Confucius's ideas regarding the concepts of humaneness, ren, or gen. It's usually ren though, also translated as humanity. All right, now I will read the excerpts. And again, these excerpts are taken from William Theodore de Barry's Sources of Chinese Tradition, Volume 1, Columbia University Press, 1999. All right. There's the abridged version and the longer version. I'll read the longer version. Okay, but first let's go over the questions first, and then we'll discuss these questions in class. What kind of quality or virtue is ren, or humaneness? And what kind of person could be called a person of humaneness, ren? Okay, ren. Okay, that's question number 1. Number 2. Do you find any similarities between the humaneness of Confucius and the guiding principles of other religious tradition with which you may be familiar? For example, love or charity in Christianity, social responsibility in Judaism, or compassion in Buddhism. Any differences? Okay, this is a very important question, so make a list of the similarities and differences that Ren has with other key concepts in other world universal religions. Number 3, can relations within a family be based on the concept of humaneness? Can a government be based on the same concept? Right. So Han Feize will come after Confucius and say that governments cannot be based on this idea of Ren, that chaos will lead from that, and you need very harsh and strict laws to maintain order in society. Number 4, how does Confucius's concept of humaneness, Ren, compare to the way in which philosophers such as Han Fei, who I just mentioned, and Lord Shang think about human beings and human society? So these two thinkers have a much darker idea of humanity, right? And they think humanity is kind of wild and evil and needs to be controlled through harsh punishments and so forth. And we'll get to Han Fei, who's the author of the Han Fei, and Lord Shang later in this class. All right, now for the selections from the Lunyu, the Analects, on humaneness, Ren. Chapter 4, line 2. The master said, not line 2, section 4, what's the word for this? Hold on a second. All right, there are differing opinions on this subject, but for now I think I'll call them, refer to these as book and chapter. So when it says the Lunyu 4:2, I'll call that the Analects, book 4, chapter 2. Okay, so book 4, chapter 2. The master said, one who is not humane, Ren, is able neither to abide for long in hardship nor to abide for long in joy. Le is the word for joy. Keep that in mind. The humane, Ren, find peace in humaneness, Ren. The knowing derive profit from humaneness. Okay, book 4, chapter 5 now. The master said, wealth and honor are what people desire, but one should not abide in them if it cannot be done in accordance with the way, the Tao. Poverty and lowliness are what people dislike, but one should not avoid them if it cannot be done in accordance with the way. If the noble person rejects humaneness, Ren, how can he fulfill that name? The noble person does not abandon humaneness for so much as the space of a meal. Even when hard-pressed, he is bound to it even in time of danger. Okay, book 4, chapter 6 now. The master said, I have not seen one who loved humaneness, nor one who hated inhumanity. One who loved humaneness will value nothing more highly. One who hated inhumanity will be humane so as not to allow inhumanity to affect his person. Is there someone whose strength has for the space of a single day been devoted to humaneness? I have not seen one whose strength was insufficient. It may have happened, but I have not seen it. Okay, book 6, chapter 21. The master said, the wise take joy in water. The humane take joy in mountains. The wise are active. The humane are tranquil. The wise enjoy. The humane endure. Book 6, chapter 28. Zigong said, what would you say of someone who broadly benefited the people and was able to help everyone? Could he be called Ren, or humane? The master said, and the master of course is Gongzi, Confucius, how would this be a matter of humaneness? Surely he would have to be a sage. Even Yao and Shun, remember Yao and Shun are the two ideal legendary emperors of the Zhou dynasty. Even Yao and Shun were concerned about, of the early Zhou dynasty I should say, even Yao and Shun were concerned about such things. The days when things were good are the days of Yao and Shun. Even Yao and Shun were concerned about such things. As for humaneness, you want to establish yourself, then help others to establish themselves. You want to develop yourself, then help others to develop themselves. Being able to recognize oneself in others, one is on the way to being humane. Chapter 7, book 7, chapter 29, the master said, is humaneness, Ren, far away? If I want to be Ren, humane, then humaneness is here. Book 12, chapter 22, Fan Chi asked about humaneness. The master said, it is loving people. He asked about wisdom. The master said, it is knowing people. When Fan Chi did not understand, the master said, raise the upright, put them over the crooked, and you should be able to cause the crooked to become upright. This is a very famous passage here. Underline that. Raise the upright. So in order to correct the people who are out of line and who tend to stray and tend to commit crime and so forth, the master said, raise the upright first, put them over the crooked, and you should be able to cause the crooked to become upright. And Hang Feizi will take issue with this and say that it's not so simple. Things don't always work out like that. Book 17, chapter 6, Zhang asked Confucius about Ren, humaneness. Confucius said, one who would carry out the 5 everywhere under heaven would be humane. I beg to ask you what they are, Zhang asked. And Confucian answered, these are the 5. Respect, liberality, trustworthiness, earnestness I think is Shang, and kindness. If you are respectful, you will have no regret. If you are liberal, you will win the multitude. If you are trustworthy, you will be trusted. If you are earnest, you will be effective. If you are kind, you will be able to influence others. All right, that's the end of this section on the excerpts from the Lunyu that have to deal with Ren. Okay, I think we'll probably return to the issue of Ren later in other selections. That's all for now. Goodbye. We'll discuss more in class.